welcome to the Positive Psychology Coaching and Diversity Institute, aka PCADDY's stream this month. I'm so excited. Well, first of all, I'm super excited to be joined by Dr. Kathleen Costello, who is my dear friend, and she's also a dynamic, amazing coach here at PCADDY and knows all about mindfulness. And y'all, she's a new mother. Welcome, Kathleen.
Thank you, Dr. Kiki. I'm always so happy to get to be here with you.
I'm excited that you are here today, and also a little bit fangirlish, around all of the beautifulness that you brought into this world, and just the fact that you are here with us on this live today. So I'm excited to have this conversation. We're going to be talking all about awareness as a gateway to inclusivity. Oh my God. So talk about getting deep. So we're going to get a little deep today on this whole thing called awareness and inclusivity. And as y'all know, here at PCADDY, we consider ourselves a diversity company, also a strengths-based company. So these are two kind of topics that we feel collide beautifully, but we also think that organizations don't always, get this part right. And we think that awareness can be a tool for you as a leader or as an organization to really begin to think about how to be more inclusive in your environment. So I think one of the questions I want to throw out there is, what is our definition of awareness, right? Because I know that people may talk about awareness often, but what is our definition? And, when it comes to awareness, and I can kind of start off. I think that it's the knowledge or perception of a situation, right? Like your understanding, your knowledge of a situation that may be going on around you, in front of you. You may be in it. And some people think that it's also a fact, right? Like it's your truth. It's like what's happening in front of you. So I think that's kind of my definition when I think about awareness. What about you, Dr. Kathleen?
Yeah, so that's interesting what you last said about kind of that it's a fact, because I would say, awareness, like you described, is the way we have this interpretive ability of whatever's happening. So there's a situation, and then there's something here that's able to take that in, right? And that's awareness, right? That's part of what is meant by being alive. If we weren't alive, we wouldn't have awareness. But I think that there's another piece is how we interpret it.
Yes.
Because really anything that's going on by itself is just happening, right? We're the ones that puts the filter on it of judging it. Is it good? Is it bad? Do we like it? Do we not? So I think that's like, there's pure awareness, and then there's kind of pure awareness with our opinion, experience, lens, whatever, of how we're perceiving the experience.
Yes. And I love that too, because, when I say fact, I think that people can tend to think that this is hardcore fact, this is truth, right? Mm-hmm. It may be true for you the way that you're seeing it, but does it make it true overall? And then who's the judge of that, right? I think there's a saying that I always love: nothing has meaning except for the meaning you give it.
Yes.
And we all give meaning to things, right? We all give meaning to things. But I think that's a lot of times things are happening around us that we are just may not even be aware that is happening around us. Like, so many situations are going on in front of our face, and we might not even know, that situation is actually happening, or what that situation truly means. And I think that happens a lot in organizations.
Absolutely. And I think that's why this conversation is so great, because I think that you nailed it when it comes to a feeling of inclusivity, because I think a lot of times we are not aware of things that don't really affect us, right?
Mm.
So if I go to work and things are feeling good and people are treating me well and da 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 da, I'm probably going to be less aware that maybe somebody else's experience of the exact same environment might be totally different. And that's okay, right? Like we can't be in everybody else's head and their experience. But I think that's why this conversation is so powerful, because it's that extra step of not just being aware of our own perceived experience, but broadening that awareness a little more to take in, okay, what else is happening and what else might other people be experiencing? You know, we don't have a crystal ball, we can't know for sure,
Yeah.
but if we're only ever looking at it from our own perception, then we probably aren't getting a full picture of what the experience is for everyone.
Yeah, no, oh my God, you're so right. Because that's kind of what I was wanting to kind of think about and talk about next, which was why is awareness important in any situation? I think you kind of already hit it on the head, meaning it's important because we are communal, right? Like I think a lot of people, I think that the pandemic has made us think that we can just operate in a silo in our home and be non-communal with our cameras off, right? Like, and this is what we're hearing from a lot of organizations. How do we get people back into the organization, back functioning the way we used to? I don't know that it'll go back the way we used to, but we are communal people. Like we work in groups. Anytime you're at a job, you're working within a group, right? And so when it comes to awareness, understanding what's going on with your coworker who might be right here, or your boss, or your employee, it is so freaking important because we're disconnected. Like
Yes.
we're so disconnected right now that it is hard for a lot of organizations to even have this hybrid model that they have, because we become so disconnected, because we're not aware, and we're not even, to me, putting it at the top of the list to become more aware of what's going on with everybody.
I agree. And I mean, it's tough, right? Zoom boxes are really hard to interpret what people's experiences are. I mean, even if you're masterful at reading, facial expressions and body language, or like you said, so many people's cameras are off, so maybe you can sense something in the tone of someone's voice. And so, yeah, I would say it's more difficult now in some ways than ever to be able to have that kind of broader awareness of other people's experiences.
Yes. I mean, I think that if we can get to solving this issue, we all are going to be better for it. And I do think that
Absolutely.
there are a lot of organizations out there that are trying. And so, that's kind of what we're talking about today. And so I wanted to kind of dive into what we mean when we talk about inclusivity, right? Because inclusivity is one of those words, we got diversity, equity, and inclusivity, right? So, and I think a lot of people think that all of these terms mean the same thing, but they mean something slightly different. So when we're talking about inclusivity, it is basically a policy of not excluding people or members based on gender, race, class, sexuality, and disability, right? So we're talking about not excluding people, which means we're talking about including people, especially, maybe marginalized people who might not be included in on whatever the conversation, whatever we have going on in the organization. That's what we mean by inclusivity, meaning no matter how you look, what you believe, what your color is, sexual orientation, we don't exclude you. That's what, when we're talking about inclusivity, it means you get to show up being who you are and you are included. What about you? What do you think?
Yeah, so this may be a really simplistic way of kind of understanding DEI, but I kind of think of it as like diversity is we bring a lot of folks say to the table, right? A lot of
Mhm.
different folks from different backgrounds, like you said, different sexual orientations, different, ethnic backgrounds. So we bring everybody to the table, right? That's diversity. Equity is then making sure everybody at the table has the same amount. They have access to the same amount. They can serve themselves the same. Let's use food, right? They can serve the same food. They can each have the same thing. But inclusion is making sure everybody at the table feels like they belong, actually feel
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
they're welcome to the table, right?
Yeah.
It's not just enough that we have this great diverse group or that everybody gets access to everything, because at the end of the day, we all want to feel like we belong. And we actually just
Mhm.
recently did a recording, I think last month or in the previous months, about belonging as a human need.
Yes.
It's on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and so
Yes.
we need it. Like, we're a community, as you mentioned earlier, we're communal.
Yeah.
We don't always feel it as much now
Yeah.
because we're not as, interdependent.
Mhm.
But inclusion is so important because it makes us feel like we're part of something bigger. It makes us
Yeah.
feel like we have a community. And I think that that's actually been a beautiful thing happening in the workplace, I would say, over maybe the last 5 to 10 years, is trying to create these
Mhm.
more inclusive, friendly work environments focused on well-being. But I think that the I part of DEI is, they're all important, but
Yeah.
it is the part that can also be a little more difficult to create or to
Yeah.
harness, right? Because it is a little bit more it's not as, I don't want to say measurable, but
Mhm.
when we look at a diverse table, we can look and see, okay, we have all this diversity represented. We can see on paper everybody's getting equity. Inclusion's a little more tricky, I guess, in a way, because it's more of a felt sense. It's more of something we have to work on creating, so that everybody feels part of it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think I love that saying is diversity is being invited to the table and inclusion is being invited to dance. Right.
Yes,
Like, so
yes.
you kind of get to play, like you're like, oh, I'm here. Yeah, I'm here. I'm diverse. You're diverse. We're all diverse. But oh, I get to dance. I get to, you're asking me to the floor.
Yes, I
You
love
know what I'm
that.
saying? So I love that. I love that. That metaphor. And I think that you're right. I think that belonging is definitely and inclusion is definitely harder to measure. And I think a lot of it is it can be, it's felt intrinsic, from the person. But environments can help, right? They
Mhm.
can help to affect and help people, create an environment that is conducive to, to more belonging. And I think that we can do that, part of that, with like psychological safety, right?
Mhm,
Creating
mhm,
a place. And so psychological safety means um, the ability of someone being able to show up to work and feeling like they can bring themselves, right?
mhm,
So if I can show up in my brown skin and feel okay. You can show up in your
mhm,
white skin and feel okay, right? I
mhm,
can show up with um my my religious beliefs, political beliefs. I might not, be shouting them, from the rooftop, but it is a value system for me, and that then makes me who I am. So then I
mhm,
can still be okay, right? And I think that that is super important for organizations to be able to create an environment where people feel like they can show up and just be themselves
mhm.
versus, um, putting on a mask or something like that in the organization.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, and I would even say, you know, perhaps for both of us, even just showing up and being okay that we're women, and that, we can have a voice, that we can show up in certain ways,
Mhm.
we can be assertive, we can be, and that those qualities aren't interpreted in a certain way,
Right.
right? That,
Yeah.
yeah. So I think that it's really, like you said, being able to bring your full self, right? And
Mhm.
again, within professional boundaries. We talked about
Right.
that, I think, in a previous conversation. Like,
Right.
but still, that we can really just be who we are and know that we're still gonna, perform well. We're gonna get the job done, but we
Mhm.
all don't have to look, act, believe the same things in order for that to
Absolutely.
happen.
Yeah, no, I think that that's so important. So when it comes to awareness, why is that super important to, as we combine it with inclusivity? Like, how do we really take awareness and really make it a gateway for inclusivity?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of ways. I was thinking this morning about, implicit bias and
Mm,
these different things that we can become more aware of our own experience, begin
mm,
to look at certain things like I just said, if somebody shows up to a meeting and they have certain qualities, am I judging that person
yes.
because perhaps they are really assertive? Now again, this doesn't mean you have to like everyone, right? I
Yeah.
want to clarify, right? We don't have to necessarily jive with everybody's personalities or agree with their belief systems, but it's about
Mhm.
allowing people to be. So I think that first doing that inventory of our own beliefs, maybe our own prejudices that we may or may not be aware of, is a really important place to start. And that is part of awareness. That is part of growing in your own
Mhm.
awareness, is recognizing some of these things that we may have never looked at within ourselves. We may
Yeah.
never had to.
Yeah.
If we weren't used to working in a diverse environment or perhaps working with people with different belief systems, we may have never bumped up against it. And it's
Yeah.
okay that that's uncomfortable.
Mhm.
But the invitation is to start to look at it. I'm a big fan of starting with ourselves first with
Me too.
anything and then moving outward.
Yep.
So looking at the things within ourselves to grow in awareness and then broadening that out to start to get more curious about what other people's experiences might be. Again, I
Yeah.
caution that we don't have a crystal ball. We can't be
Right.
sure that we know other people's experiences, but that we make it not just so self-referential, that it's not just
Mhm.
my experience and that's all I care about.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you just said. I think that it is, I also think that it takes, I think that when particular you might not be at a place in your life where you want to kind of look outside of yourself. I do think that it takes a lot to then do that, right? Because I think that that can happen at different points in our lives. Sometimes in our lives, we just tired. Like I'm just tired. I'm tired of, I just want to worry about me. I got
Yes.
so many things going on, right? And I get that, right? I
Mhm.
totally get that. And you will hear that at sometimes from people. But I also think too, if you don't have a lot of diversity and you may not want to do it anyway, right? Like, so there's a
Mhm.
lot of different ways as to why we might not want to use the awareness to look outside of us. But this is why I want to challenge leaders to I guess step into this space, right?
Mhm.
Because you can learn a lot from it.
Mhm.
And if but you can you all I think we learn the most when we're open.
Mhm.
Like when
Yep.
we're open to receive. If you're not open to receive, then your learning is probably going to be minimal.
Yeah, I would agree. And I agree. Building awareness is sometimes work,
Mhm.
and I listen, as like you mentioned, being a new mom, going on very little sleep, some periods of our life we are just not, we just kind of want to come in, get our work done, punch the clock and
Mhm.
go. And in some of these situations that involve DEI, it can be kind of fragile territory too.
Yeah.
We don't always know how to respond or
Mhm.
react. And so I think for some of us, it can be just like, well, I'm just going to avoid it. Like I'm going to kind of stay in my lane and just kind of
Mhm.
ignore. So it takes time, but I agree with you. I think especially leaders, especially folks who are in any kind of management where they're working with teams, like these, in my opinion, my humble opinion, these are things that leaders need to consider, right? When you're a
Mhm.
people manager, you are in some way managing people's experiences, not entirely. It's not your
Mhm.
job to make everybody happy, but
Yeah.
I think there's certain levels where people do need to have this commitment to awareness in order to foster really inclusive and hopefully enjoyable teams to work on.
Yeah, I totally agree. And this I always say this when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion. it's an issue that we have. It's not
Mhm.
going to go anywhere. Whether, we as individuals tend to focus on it or not, or whether companies tend to focus it on or not, it's not going anywhere because we will continue to forever have differences,
Mhm.
and we are human beings, and so we're always going to have differences when it comes to communication styles, leadership development, all of those things, right? And these aspects, or this intersectionality, right, like,
Mhm.
then is a layer on top of all those problems that already exist, right? You
Mhm.
can't give me an organization that has, like, they don't have no problems with communication, they have no issues with, leadership development. You can't show me an organization. You might show me an organization that does well in the area, which, to that I say kudos, right?
Mhm.
But for the most part, there are always going to be leaders who need some kind of development, and we always are going to be having difficult conversations
Mhm.
that we need to have. So this is not going anywhere. So building that awareness is going to be super key when we're talking about building these inclusive environments. And I know for a fact, I know that I'm not going to ever start harping on it and trying to create inclusive environment for
Mhm.
everyone in Peabody, right? And
Mhm.
so, and then helping organizations do the same. So, what are some steps or some tools that leaders or organizations can take to build more awareness?
It's a great question.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, well, I think number one, the first thing you mentioned was psychological safety. So creating an environment, whether it's with the leader or there's an outlet with HR, or there's some type of outlet where people can go and feel like it's safe to share their
Mm-hmm.
experience,
Yeah.
is one. The idea of a survey, though I know people might have mixed feelings about filling out surveys. Listen, I don't always love it myself, but I think they can be really important, especially the way they're framed.
Mm-hmm.
To know what people, their experiences, and making it anonymous or optional to be
Yeah.
anonymous, so people don't feel like they have to but that can give you a lay of the land of how inclusive people feel.
Yeah.
I think the other thing is not feeling like you have to figure it all out on your own either as a leader, right? Like, I
Yeah.
think leaders put a lot of pressure on themselves, and that can make it easy to avoid. But just approaching your team and saying, hey, like, what would be fun for you all? What would be something that you would like to do? Again, we're working remotely for a lot of us, so it makes like off sites or things like that a little more challenging. But just finding creative opportunities and polling the group, that you don't have to figure it
Mm-hmm.
all out yourself. And then the fourth thing is just, again, is looking within to see what comes up in certain situations. So if I can cap that, I would say it's psychological safety, maybe some kind of a survey to get a lay of the land,
Mm-hmm.
put it out to your people,
Right.
to get creative ideas, and then look within. If there's
Yeah.
uncomfortable situations, be willing to ask those questions of yourself and go from there.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said, and I think that, we talk about surveys and stuff like that. I think it's super important. What I would also, add to the list is, like, reaching out to professionals, right? Like
Mhm.
PCADI, right? Like, employing coaches within the organization, someone that, people can actually talk to outside of the organization.
Mhm.
We found that this works, right? Like, of course, we are a coaching organization, but we found that when organizations bring us in to do coaching, it helps increase awareness, right?
Mhm.
Coaching in general, right? Right. That's one of the benefits of coaching, is that it increases awareness for the person who is receiving coaching. And so I think that that's a beautiful thing that organizations can do, and not necessarily try to solve the problem all by themselves.
Mhm.
They can literally, hire a reputable company who can help them with, this skill, helping them implement the skill for their leaders and stuff. And so I think that that's super important, as well as everything that you said. And I think surveys and stuff, I think that those are great, because and that can happen in strategic planning, all of those. And I think
Mhm.
that it's good to get the pulse of your employees, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if it's not survey, how else will you actually get the pulse of your employees, which is
Mm-hmm.
what you need to do. So that you may do it, they may do it by town hall, specific, small groups, those kinds of things. But there's a lot of different ways to be able to get the pulse of the employees of the organization,
Mm-hmm.
which is what's going to be needed. Because how do you know if you're inclusive if you don't know what everybody is feeling in the organization? Thanks, Heather, for joining us. She said an outside perspective can be so helpful, be it one-on-one coaching or team development. I think it's just so true, right? Like we can't see sometimes what we can't see. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you can't
Absolutely.
see what you can't see. So I always say you also can't solve what you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like if you don't know that it's even happening, how are you to then solve it? And so
Absolutely.
I think that that is very important when it comes to awareness, because I'll tend to ask myself, what am I not seeing? And then but it's going to be hard for me to answer that question. I probably
Mm-hmm.
need to ask a coach or somebody else, what am I not seeing in this
Mm-hmm.
situation? And I do that often because guess what? I don't see everything.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, Kiki, I probably people are tired of me saying it this way, but I try to keep coaching pretty, simplistic, even though it's a beautiful, very multidimensional process. But I say, coaching in my experience really has two main wings: building awareness, and that comes through the coaching relationship and asking powerful questions and being willing, like you said, to see some of our blind spots. And I mean, it's just an amazing process. Just having the space to talk things out with someone who has no bias, who's a third party. I mean, that's powerful in of itself. But then the
Mhm.
other wing of coaching is action. So awareness and
Mhm.
action. And the action is really often born out of the awareness, right?
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's one of my favorite parts of coaching are the aha moments, right? We
Yeah.
might come into a session kind of feeling like we're at a dead end. We have no idea what to do. And just through that conversation, that
Mhm.
curious, generative conversation, at the end, most of the time, there's a whole new solution that arises purely because of the coaching experience. So I mean, again, obviously, I love coaching, so I'm going to be a big fan of it. But I think you're absolutely right, and it's also a gift that we give to ourselves to dedicate that time to
Mhm.
actually have someone help us build that awareness.
Yes.
And I just think it's priceless.
Me too. Me too. Oh my gosh, we could continue to talk about this all day because this is what we do. But I want to say, if you are an organization or a leader out there that needs to build more awareness, number one, believe that you have everything inside of you to be able to get to the place with that you want to be. And number two, I would say, think about some of the tools that we've offered in this session today to help you build that more inclusive environment for yourself and for others in your organization. I want to invite you all to the PCADI leadership community. We are building an amazing community of leaders that we share resources, coaching, and all amazing tools and techniques on how to build positively diverse organizations. And so you can find that at pcaddyleadership.com. And you can also reach out to us at pcaddy.com if you are an organization or a leader who would love some leadership development or some diversity development. So thank you, Dr. Kathleen, for being here today with me. We always have such amazingly wonderful conversations about really important and cool topics, I think.
I
So
agree.
thank you for being here with us.
Absolutely. Thanks, Dr. Kiki. Always love getting to be on with you. It's always fun, and the time goes so fast. Like you said, we can talk for hours. So thank you for having me.
Awesome. All right, y'all. Until next time, go out and create amazing cultures. Take care.